Hey guys! From the last two videos, we went over notes, intervals, rhythm, scales, and the most basic aspects of music. Now this segment will be on chords. Now, even though electronic music doesn't require quite as much knowledge with the definitions of music theory, from what I've seen, I have to cover a few misconceptions here. A chord is 3 or more associated pitches, commonly played at the same time. A two-note chord doesn't exist in theory. This is actually defined as a collection of two notes known as a dyad. Now, another misconception, not all three-note chords are triads. A general term for a three-note chord is a trichord. A triad is more unique than a trichord. Two of the three possible intervals will be thirds and triads when written in root position, which has this structure and sounds like this. The thirds are right here and here. The reason why I mentioned three possible intervals is because chords with identical notes on different octaves can have different note placement. So looking at the structure, the triads don't always have to follow this exact setup, with thirds between each of the three notes. For example, if we move the bottom note up one octave, this is a first inversion triad. If we take it further and move the low note to the top again, we now have a second inversion triad. The inversion is based on the placement of the lowest note, the bass note. So the third intervals still exist when put back into root position. The bass on the root note right here is considered root position. The bass on the third note here is considered first inversion. And the bass on the fifth note here is considered second inversion. Now here are the types of triads: major, minor, diminished, and augmented. The major triad, like the major scale, has a happy quality to it. And the minor triad has a sad quality to it. Now more on those other two qualities, diminished and augmented. I'll start with the triads. From my perspective, the diminished triad has a sense of worry. And again, from my perspective, the augmented triad has a sense of wonder or mystery. Now would be a good time to go over the intervals not covered in the first video. This one is a diminished fifth, part of the diminished triad, and this one is an augmented fifth, part of the augmented triad. I know the augmented fifth is the same interval as the minor sixth, but it depends on the context. For example, in this chord, the interval is a minor sixth because the context of the root position chord, which is right here. Now there are two other intervals, the minor seventh and the major seventh, but we'll go over those, the use for those near the end of the video. Here's a little note about learning the triads and the emotional responses generated from them. These emotional qualities may be different from person to person, and in my opinion, the best way to learn the behavior of these triads, and perhaps music in general, is to associate the emotional response to these triads with the way they are structured, like the way I associate mystery with the augmented chord and worry with the diminished chord. So to expand on note placement, the spacing of the notes can also be changed. This is still a root position chord, and this is still a first inversion chord because of where the bass is placed. Now, since I'm not going over the notations on a musical staff as much, I won't go over the standards of figured bass. However, I highly advise you to look it up on Google. If I have to cover it or go over it for future material, I will as the situation arises. So, one or two more things. I'm going to show the minor and major seventh intervals right here. That's the minor and this is the major. These are the basis for seventh chords, which are four-note chords defined by this seventh interval. One way to think of it can be a basic triad with a seventh added on top. Like triads, they have inversions in different types, but those will be dealt with much later. Alright, so the next part will deal with the relation of these triads to the scales, and then I'll probably go over more about the relation of the bass to these chords, with perhaps a bit of review, considering the segment after the next one will finally deal with writing your own composition. So check out my other music theory videos, my songs, and my Tumblr, and I'll catch you guys later.